the Indigenous Literatures panel called Groundwork. I'm your host, Nathan Negan, noted Adler. I'm Anishinaabe and Jewish. I'm a member of the Lac First Nation in Northern Ontario, but I grew up in Southern Ontario, and I've been living in the in Vancouver area for about 3.5 years. And I'm a writer, an artist, and a filmmaker. Mostly I write horror and urban fantasy, but some poetry and some um, uh, artsy things and video poetry and all kinds of stuff. So it's a bit about me, and I'm also a teacher at Kwantlen U. What else? I think it's also important that we should start. I want to start with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to just say that the festival takes place on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that because it's not my territory, First Nations, but this is pretty far from Lac de Lac. So I just want to know that it's their land. And with that, I think I should also start by saying to thank our sponsors. I want to say a special thank you to Pace Accounting for sponsoring this event. Connect Beat UBC, UBC Library, UBC Robson Square for the sponsorship of the space, which made this festival available to us. I'd like to take a moment to also thank our other donors and sponsors: Canada Arts Council, Canada Heritage Fund, BC Gaming, Creative BC, City of Vancouver, the BVIA, the Hamber Foundation, the Joseph Wask Foundation, Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, Seawill, Pace and Associates, Federation of BC Writers, League of Canadian Poets, the Writers Union of Canada, and more. So for a full list, check out the website. Because without the sponsors, this festival wouldn't happen. And if you haven't already, you can also make a donation on the Word Vancouver website. And I'd also like to say thank you to all the staff, volunteers of Word Vancouver for making this happen, for all their time and energy, and also the audience for coming out and supporting the festival. Yay. So welcome. Let me see if I missed anything in my little notes here. And what else? Yeah, that's all done. So I thought we'd start just with the readings from each of the three panelists. But first, I should introduce you. That goes first. So I wanted to name this panel Groundwork to reference the connection to territory, but also the way these writers are laying the ground for both their own writing and storytelling, and also for each other and our communities and future writers as well. So we'll introduce Joseph first. Joseph Kakwinokanasum is a member of James Smith Cree Nation. He grew up in northeastern BC and moved to Vancouver in 1989. He's a graduate of the SFU's Writers Studio. He published his first novel, My Indian Suburb, here with Tidewater Press in 2022. He continues to write on the unceded territory of the Tsauk Nation. For more information about Joseph, visit starblanketstoryteller.com.
Rudy. Welcome.
Yeah. Up next, we have Mahara Allbrett. Mahara belongs to the Tsleil-Waututh Nation and has been writing poetry since her teen years. She put out a book in 1971 titled Kalala Poem. Under the name Skyros Bruce. Skyros. I've been saying it all wrong.
That's okay.
She has been published numerous times over the years and given poetry reading twice on the CBC radio. She lives and works in her community as a counselor and healer. And our third panelist for today is Alex Taylor-McCallum. Alex is Kwak Kwak Kwak. This one's harder for me to say. Kwak Kwak Tewak, and Nuchanoth storyteller and artist of many different mediums. They're a muralist, painter, drummer, singer, lyricist, and indigenizing various musical genres. He's also an event organizer, a filmmaker, a script writer, an actor, a decolonial cook at Red Cedar Cafe, and a father to 2 sons. Lots of things. Yeah, he's a very talented guy.
Busy man. Busy man. I
Busy.
have 2 cats.
Yeah. He's now alcohol-free for over 2 years, and he has found immense healing through the various traumatic effects of colonization, while immersing himself into the art of hip-hop lyricism, which they view as an innovative, creative, native continuation of the traditional indigenous ways of storytelling. It's a great way of putting it. I love that. So yeah, I think we'll start off by asking each of you to maybe read something from your work.
Who wants to go first? Paper, rock, scissors?
That works. Whoever wants to go.
Oh, okay. Well,
Joseph,
okay. I might as well. Okay. I'm going to read the prologue to the book. That will keep us together. Every chapter is essentially named after a song. So there's kind of a theme to that as well. So kind of dictates sort of the cadence of the book, I guess, for lack of a better term. Hunter woke to Aunt Myrtle's nudging. "Baby boy," she said, a warm hand pressed against his cheek. "Wake up, sweetheart." Hunter rubbed his eyes. "What?" He yawned. "You're going on an adventure with Mum and 'em." Her smile was relaxed, rehearsed. She patted his leg. "Astam, as quick as you can." Myrtle turned on his bedside lamp and gathered a few pairs of socks and underwear, 2 of his favorite shirts, and a pair of pants, stuffing them into a black plastic garbage bag. "Dress warm. I'll go get your toothbrush and tell Mum you're almost ready." Hunter dressed and yawned again as he exited his room, still rubbing his eyes. He shuffled into the dining room, where Deb and Noah sat at the table, school bags in hand and worry marks furrowed between their brows, their skin pale. Hunter's heart jumped into his throat, and he stood wide-eyed, completely awake at the sight of his frightened siblings. He didn't think he'd like this adventure. Margaret walked into the dining room with short, quick steps, Myrtle following close behind. Margaret turned and whispered in her sister's ear. "Baby boy," Myrtle said softly. "Hunter, go grab my purse," she said, pointed with her chin to the living room. Hunter fetched the purse and handed it to his aunt. Myrtle pulled all the money she had out of her wallet. "Where'll you go?" she asked Margaret. Myrtle's eyes shone, and when she blinked, tears fell down her round cheeks, along the creases of the top of her lip to the corners of her mouth. She wiped her eyes. "Wherever it is, I'll call you when I get there." Margaret kissed her forehead. "I promise." They hugged. "No more white men taking our children away." Myrtle sobbed into the shoulder of her older sister. Sad tears, but necessary tears. They separated and looked at each other. "They'll have to kill me first," said Margaret. Hunter sat in the back of the old 4-door Pontiac with Deb. She stared out into the darkness, mute. Her breath fogged the window. Hunter reached across the bench seat to press a hand on her arm. Deb, 5 years older, turned to face him. He leaned over and whispered, "What's going on? Where are we going, eh?" Deb leaned her head towards her little brother and whispered, "Dad's trying to take us." "Take us where?" Deb whispered, "He wants me and Noah to go live with him." She straightened, leaned her head on the window, and stared out into the blackness. Hunter didn't know his father. He'd left 6 years ago when he was only 3. He knew he looked like his dad. His mom had told him so. Hunter also knew that his aunties and his uncles had nothing good to say about Bill Frank. "Doesn't he want me?" Deb didn't answer. Before Margaret told her to go and get packed, Deb had heard her mother, and Aunt Myrtle talking. George says Bill's been bragging about how he's planning on taking the kids while you're at work, Myrtle said. No fucking way is that animal gonna take my kids, Margaret hissed. He only wants to take Noah and Deb, says Hunter's not his. Noah sat tall in the front passenger seat, scrutinized the map and sprawled over his thin lap, a flashlight in his right hand. Where are we going, Mom? Noah looked at Margaret, who was waving to her sister, standing at the foot of the porch. As far away as we can get from this place, my boy. She looked at Noah. We gotta go before the social workers come. She checked her left shoulder, signaled onto Highway 2, and headed northwest out of Edmonton.
That's a really nice reading voice you have. I like how you did all the voices, and also, have you considered doing your own audiobook? Yeah, it's really well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Who's next?
Okay. So I don't know how long 5 minutes is. Maybe you can let me know when I'm getting close to
I
it.
can
Give me a minute warning.
I can give you a little signal.
Okay, thank you. I haven't written poetry for a long time. I started writing when I was a teenager, about 15 years old, and started getting published at 16, and was doing my first poetry reading at 16 as well at UBC.
Nice.
Yeah, and I've been writing a lot. I wrote a lot for quite a while when I was very young, and then I stopped for quite a few years. When I got married, I didn't write very much at all. And then I started again when I left my marriage. So I published a fair amount of poems. This is one of my favorite poems. Is this a microphone? Okay. Let me know, wave at me if you can't hear me, okay? Okay, so this poem, I think I wrote it in the 1990s. It's called Detachment. When I look up at the sky beyond the tips of the evergreens in my backyard, since you have gone, I see that you are here, for that is you. When I see the leaf that is silver white has not left the tree on my back porch, I know that you are here, for that is you. And you are also the cat beneath my hand, the candle flickering beside me, and my self-care. All that I have left of you on this level is the scent of flowers on my clothing, which is the intermingling of our essences. And even this I must detach from, like the white leaf on the tree, because all that I have left of you is like the space in the bowl. Although it cannot be seen, without it there is no bowl. And in letting you go, I realize the sky is always here.
Wow.
Thank you. And this one.
Any
this
tissue?
One, that's okay, you can wait till the end. This one I wrote for my grandson. This was, he was about 3 years old at the time. And a lot of people say when they hear this poem and some of my other poems that it's really nice to close your eyes because there's a lot of visuals in it. For Gabriel, just as you are, under the glaze of the summer sun and the bell-shaped yellow flowers hanging like pendants, silent and heavy in the heat, you spread your gossamer wings like a dragonfly, floating and darting over flowers, surrounding ponds and fountains like a necklace of brilliant colors. You laugh, completely delighted that I can't reach you as you throw handfuls of pebbles into the water, then dash off to the Asian garden, where we pass an ancient Chinese woman coming out of a circular archway on the arm of her handsome, white goateed son. You take no notice until we meet them again, once more at the beginning. Her son sitting on a wooden bench in the shade, you find her resting lightly on her cane amongst the flowers. Call me over to come into the presence of your delightful discovery, then fall suddenly into a full embrace of her fragile body. She lifts frail porcelain arms, creased with lines, that become gossamer wings around your little brown form, and you, burst back to look into her face once more before taking flight again. And this one I wrote for a client of mine who was on the downtown east side at that time. And she worked for a Native women's organization down there. And she stood up and read this poem in front of all of the staff there, which really impressed me. I thought it was very beautiful. Sitting before me, your dark hair a loose waterfall over your left shoulder, I watch as tears arise from your center like pure water from a spring. You are remembering your mother's words, calling you a whore. When you sit before me and say that you are not beautiful, I want to remind you that you are a candle still beaming light after all these years. You are not what happened to you. You are not the lies you were told. You are not the murder that you committed in self-defense. You are not the needles and the prostitution that you used to do. You are not the violations that others committed against the beautiful child that you were. But you are the soft, small duckling I saw walking on lotus leaves this afternoon, and the perfect yellow lotus flower beside her. And you are the bush flowers I saw with deep purple centers and delicate mauve petals like lace blossoming in the light. And this one is also for a client from the downtown east side. Is it? Should I?
You can read another one if you like. I will.
Okay. All right. This will be the last one for now. Yeah, this was one of my favorite clients. And the first part I just want to say is about the sun, because maybe I didn't make it clear enough. The apricot circle lays itself down on the horizon of the city of mountains meet ocean. Concrete curtains sometimes open to reveal cool sea air, green-blue trees, white powder of mountains meet sky. I am smiling sadly, as I sometimes do when this work takes its ironic turns, and you are counting out $100 bills on your hotel room bed, giving me the money so that you won't kill yourself smoking the white powder in your glass pipe. Your adopted father smoked another kind of pipe, but he and your adopted mother didn't know how to bring their prayers into living for so many years after residential school. You say in a tone that is both frank and embarrassed, my father was a white guy. But I don't see it anywhere except in the light color of your skin as you sit with the long-limbed gracefulness of your people. Indian eyes glance as if painted with brush strokes over fine cheekbones. Your clear forehead has tiny beads forming with the fevered look people have down here. People driving by in their fast factory cars wouldn't know that you read world religions and Carl Jung. They don't know that you carry a curled up copy of Siddhartha in your back pocket on my now worn Writing Down the Bones. They don't know how hard you try to pry yourself away from the craving in your brain and slip, because that white powder tricks people's minds into believing they will die if they don't have it, instead of the truth, which is they will die if they do.
Really beautiful, powerful words. You have so many beautiful imagery and sensory language in your poems, and then they have this really strong edge that just like cuts right through you at the same time. So yeah, I really like that balance between like, yeah, it just like guts you, and then but it's beautiful at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Holy moly. Yeah, really felt that. Those last two poems there. Just want to start by saying I'm grateful to you, Nathan, for reaching out to me to be a part of this this gathering here on Musqueam territory, Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish territory. Traveled here from Vancouver Island today. I feel like I should say that made a discovery when coming here, when I saw Mahara, that Mahara used to be my counselor when I was living here in Vancouver a while ago, but I really have no memories of our conversations too much. I just remember your presence and speaking about my life, and you know, like Nathan said in the bio, you know, I am recovering alcoholic addict, you know, and I'm 28 months sober now, and a lot of my writing has to do with that, with healing from those intergenerational traumas, and grateful to be a part of this event because I don't have a book to read from. The lyrics I write, I've worked hard on remembering them. And the first song I'd like to share, or first piece of writing I'd like to share, just say a brief bit about it, is that the lyrics kind of came to me after painting. I was painting something that I used the colors red, white, and black, and I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to create. All I knew is that I kind of wanted to put a buckwis into it. Buckwis in our Kakwinokanasum culture. So, don't want to get too deep into it, but you know, it's loosely translated in English to a wild man of the woods, and it kind of entices people with something that looks edible, but really it's like a ghost food, and if you take some of it, you'll become like buckwis and almost lose your spirit. So metaphorically, to me, it's almost like people that offer us enticing things, you know, that they say will provide us a good time, and you know, like drugs and alcohol, but really it makes us lose our spirit. You know, it's around us, but it's not really fully with us. But yeah, using these colors of red and white, it really just reminded me of Canada, and I kind of put that representation of ghosts within it, and I don't know. Sorry, I'm kind of going on about it's what I do sometimes, but
I thought you'd already started.
But yeah, it was a really heavy time when it was written, you know, with the news of 215 found in Suquamish territory in Kamloops, you know, residential school sites. And it just reminded me of this haunting representation of Canada. But I call this a letter to Canada. It might get a bit loud.
It's okay. It's a big room. You can fill up the space with your...
And just let me know if I'm taking too much time.
No.
Ho, ho! Canada of red and white. Feed us all fire, water, the field, the duels and fights. I try to stay resilient despite how you've tried to set my great-great-great-grandpa's box of treasures alight. Shut down our ceremonial social functions. In the name of the Lord, with guns and swords, commit child abductions. Attempt to chop down our tree of life and replace it with dysfunction. National intergenerational trauma now makes it hard to function. Canada, for you I paint this blood red pictograph to depict your sick, destructive, masochistic aftermath. You claimed you tried to teach our people to be civil, yet use evil methods of wretchedness and sadistic wrath. Claim we were on the wrong path. Son of a preacher man, you make me laugh. Out of anxious, angered apprehension, son of a preacher man, oh, you failed to mention what was labeled as a school was a haunted house of vile, hostile, high tension, controlled with atrocious, assimilative, evil, hypocritical, sinful intentions. Canada, you go on to separate us from our Owena Glees with this pavement, disguisedly make sneaky weasel arrangements where apparently savages becomes the common statement. As my elders speak their truth bravely, it's hard to face it. As I continually hear these horror stories, let's face it, simulation does not seem near upon this stolen land of intergenerational racists, where buckland people are locked up, missing and murdered on a daily basis. Oh, Canada, isn't clean water a basic human right? No, instead advertise to us fire water to fuel the fights before your red and white fireworks go boom in the polluted skies at night. We try to stay resilient despite the VPD locking us up and knocking us down when we try to stand up for our rights. Surprised when we fight back. Surprised when we fight back. Confused at the two words land back. O Canada, these words that I speak are for you. O Canada, we are done with your blatant abuse. Your fire water is no longer the drink that I choose. I am not a dumb drunk engine that is born to lose. O settler, don't believe the hype of racist stereotypes. O settler, you better take the time to listen and hear these words that I write. This intergenerational genetic traumatic memory cannot be easily wiped. We cannot stay idle when our home environment is threatened by the irreversible impacts of a leaky pipe. Oh, cousin, the number only started at 215. All my relations, I wish this nightmare was only a dream. Oh, Canada, I will not be another victim of your Canadian club fire water system. I know you will not take the time to respond or listen to the requiem I've written for my grandma Marilyn McCallum murdered and to all those missing. Oh, Canada, know that I miss her so, as long as the grass will grow and the Nimkish River flows. You can take your queen upon your $20 bills and place them down in your landfills, placed upon these burial grounds. Oh, Canada, do the sounds of the children's spirits give your bones the chills? I do not believe you'll clear the water when the venom spills, or heal the salmon people that feel it deep within their gills. Oh, Canada, you are still our guests, and we are still your hosts. Oh, Canada, you have turned our coast into a realm of hungry ghosts. So for them, here's a spirit plate. And if you want to offer one too, please don't let them wait. Oh, Canada, I do not believe these retcon simulative words that you state, as I bear witness to these corrupted systems that you still create. As patriots raise their shots with a cheers and a toast to commemorate a history of smallpox spread across the West Coast. And to the RCMP that took our reasons to live away, which they are still actively doing today. How much will you continue to take as your black snake venom spills into our rivers and lakes? Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada. I'm still alive. Hoo, hoo, hoo.
That was so awesome. Yeah, really powerful words, really powerful delivery. Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things I was thinking of when I was putting this panel together in particular is that Indigenous literatures is not the same thing as Canadian literature, and the Indigenous literature has been around for thousands of years. CanLit's only been around for 100 or so. So one of the things I was thinking is like, I didn't want to prioritize like only published authors. You know, I wasn't gonna like You know what? Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're published. You perform a poem. That's the publishing. Yeah, that's your publication right there. Right there. You've been published many times. Anytime you do a delivery, you're published. So I want to tell you. So that's one of the things I was thinking when I was putting this panel together. Also, I'm really happy to meet each one of you. I'm super excited. So my next question is that how do you see yourself and place yourself on that long continuum of literary practice that's long before CanLit, and those traditional forms, structures, rhythms, lyrics in your poetry, in your novels, in your spoken word? How do you see yourself in context of those earlier art forms, and if you draw an inspiration on any of those traditional forms that are not a part of CanLit, basically?
It's a long question.
It's a long question.
I didn't know how to say it
Yeah.
more concisely. So. It's a good question.
Where do I find myself or see myself? It's an interesting question because, Indigenous writing is just such a new thing. Really, I mean, it's only gotten legs within the last 10 years, maybe. And to see us in the stream, these salmon swimming around, in the stream, there's not a lot of salmon out there. But when you just put us all together in this one little channel, what I see is I see a completely different brand of writing that says, fuck that, to the regular rules of the English language. Like indigenizing the colonial language of English. And that's what I think we're on that path. We're swimming up that river. It's like salmon, right? We're struggling to get it out there, to do it. It's hard, but where I see myself, I'm eclipsed by talent. So just another little fish in a big fucking pond. There you go.
Well, it made me think when I read that question earlier, because I think that I'm a pioneer when it comes to writing. I've realized that just recently. My cousin Lee Miracle, I was at a reading of hers, and she said that I was the first Indigenous poet published in BC, which I didn't realize. And I remember being the first counselor, or one of the only counselors here, at least on Lower Mainland for sure. I don't think very many other places. And so I'm going to develop a school that is like a university, but without all of the colonization part of it. And get people to that master's level without their having to go through a university system, because they really, they're gatekeepers for who gets to call themselves counselors. And I don't like that, because there's a lot of natural talent out there that just needs to be guided and people need more teachings. So I didn't really know very many other Native poets when I started off. Gordon Williams, we were the only two Indigenous students at SFU back then. I knew him. And it's a good place to be. I like doing that, breaking ground. But it's nice to have company too. So I'd like to see more Indigenous writers in the future. And I find this inspiring because I haven't written for a long time, but now I think I'm going to start writing again. And I've been asked to do a poetry course in my community. So I'm going to be starting that in I think it's October, November. Yeah. So I'll probably I'm just going to have Indigenous poets, as my inspiration to teach from, and I'm going to get people writing. who may never have written before.
Lee was actually a mentor of mine, actually, when I was learning how to write and stuff. I met her years ago at the Banff Center, and she was one of my instructors. And I had her again at UBC when I was taking classes there. And I used to see her at literary events in Toronto all the time. And I named the panel after the way you got each one of you are breaking ground in your different ways.
Yeah.
I was thinking of like, what am I going to call this panel? Like, there's so different art forms, like different generational thing. Like, there's a lot of differences in terms of your genres you're working in. Like, but you're all really laying ground for your own path and other writers, I think, as well. So.
Where do I see myself in the stream? Well, it's kind of like what I write in my bio is that, you know, I don't know, I've always been gravitated towards music, lyricism, and it's just now, I don't know, since I've cut alcohol out of my life specifically, really, that the way I'm writing is done in a hip hop sort of way. You know, it's meant to have music behind it. It's meant to have a beat behind it. But like I say in that bio, I see it more so than like more so than like a 2-minute angry punk rock song. In hip hop, I find that I can tell a whole story and fit hundreds of words within something in a song. I mean, you could do that with different genres too, but I really do see it as as I say, like an innovative, creative, native way of continuing this long tradition of storytelling, which you see in all of our cultures. But, you know, like where I come from, well, I was born in Victoria on the Lekwungen territory, but, you know, my family has a lot of roots. I come from a big family. Kwak and Nutrano from the nations of the Tlawitsis, Momtagila, Muskamog, Zawedeno, Numgis, Kwagio on my Nutrano side from my late grandma, who I mentioned in that song, in which I honor her memory. My roots maternally are Nutrano through the Heshkwit, Muachit, Tlayukit nations, and, you know, in our culture, in our potlatches, that's what you see if you attend our potlatches, is all these different dances, songs that are done that are drummed with our drummers in synchronicity on the log. You know, truly do tell stories. These masks, all these different native designs, you know, and when I do murals, you know, I'm not just painting the raven for, I don't know, just to paint a raven. You know, there's a story behind that animal. You know, deep characteristics behind it, all kinds of things, you know, stories. And that's really what I live to do. I mean, with the different mediums I work with, and especially with this lyricism that I've immersed myself in now. Yeah.
May I ask you a question? So you're very multifaceted and very talented, obviously. When you're painting, and you say that there's an intention behind that painting, there's all your emotions, there's your family, there's your history, there's all that. And when you're talking about that question, we're saying like, oh, what are some of the things that we interject into our work that is cultural? With your poetry, your reading, are you thinking about it while you're painting, or are you just in the painting, or is somewhere in the back of your mind you've got so many different skills and talents and things where you got pokers in the fire? Are those pokers always in the fire, like when you're working on, like, you know, so when you're rapping, are you thinking about a painting? When you're painting, are you thinking about a rap? When you're singing, are drumming, are you thinking about like an image? Is there something what's going on in your in your head? Like, I mean, or do you take breaks from it all? Or do you use one to sort of take a rest from another? Or is that just too much
That's
question?
a deep question.
Well, you know, I mean, I think as artists, you know, we all sort of struggle with that, right? Like, I
Yeah,
mean, we
yeah.
have to use some sort of thing to kind of distract us from the thing that we're working on.
I would say what you said at the end there. One thing to it's hard to explain. Like I
Taking
said,
a break, but
yeah.
working on something else that you're really passionate about.
yeah.
And-
Life
and
is like that
It
lately.
recharges your batteries on this side, and then
Yeah.
on that side you're using your batteries for this. And it's like, I mean, it's a creative battery, but it's not, you know, like, it's not like my blood sugars are low, I need to eat
Yeah.
something and have a sleep kind of battery charge. But you know what I'm going?
Yeah, I mean, if you compare the two, creating art with a mural using my preferred medium of spray paint or acrylics, you know, compare that to my writing process, you know, it's very different things.
Yeah.
I think, you know, but like I said, that one painting did lead me to writing that song. Is I don't know. Sometimes I can start with an image. Sometimes I do this practice where I do one design and then keep connecting it, and then certain animals will come out of that, or designs, or dot work, constellations, different things, and a story emerges from that, which may make me want to write. Or I don't know. Sometimes I could write, and the way I write lyrics, like you said with your poem, it puts a lot of imagery in the mind, very visual.
So in a lot of ways, you're self-made that way. You're self-made.
I guess so.
Yeah. Right. And that's a pretty incredible thing, right? When you say it to yourself, like, I mean, I didn't go to school for this. I didn't go to school to write books. I mean, well, I did, but I mean, I didn't go to school to write to play guitar, right? Like, I mean, I play guitar.
Right.
I didn't go to school for that.
Yeah.
You just, you know, like, you just play guitar because you like it, and it gets me out of my headspace when I'm writing this shit. And so, because it's hard work, right? Like, I mean, let's face it, right? The majority of this, I'm not going to fucking lie to y'all. Most of this is actual truth. I changed the names, I changed the dates, I changed the towns, you know.
Yeah.
But when I'm playing my guitar, you know, blah, 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 you play, you practice, you end up fucking, you know, joining a band, writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
You've made yourself. You are now wrapping shit up. You are now painting shit up. You're now taking control. You're kicking ass. You're 24 months clean. And now 28. And now look at you, right? Like, I mean, so you've recreated. It's like a recreation story.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? I'm sorry, I'm taking over. I'm sorry. You're doing
I mean,
I want to know, right? Like, I mean, these are things that, you know, like I struggled with addiction. I was a heroin addict.
Yeah. And
I know what it feels like to recreate yourself and come out of that hole.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how did you, you know, okay, so when you emerged, you're free, you're flying, you're clean, you got a head, you know, you're seeing straight. You've got all these pokers in the fire now, right?
Yeah.
So, are there any more pokers coming? Do anything else? Write a book? Make a movie?
Absolutely.
Good.
Well, I mean,
Good.
you know, I like what you said about recreation story.
Yes.
Because it's really true. I mean, you know, like, honestly, growing up in Victoria, I started using drugs and alcohol when I was 11 years old, you know, at the time when my brain was developing, you know, and was witness to a lot of trauma and all kinds of stuff, you know, and so much has happened since then. And I started using it at 11, but I mean, I always found, I don't know. I always found some healing in music, or when I was a kid in elementary school and crazy stuff was going on in my house, I found an outlet through TV or film, cartoons. Just as I reflect now, ways to escape this dark reality is kind of surrounding me. It wasn't always dark, but you know, parties happen. around
I'm
me.
gonna get that shirt. Parties happen.
And so now that I'm sober, I mean, I feel like it's a really long story, you know, but now that I'm sober, I got my spirit intact. I'm doing all the things that I wanted to when I was drinking, but when I was drinking, I thought at one point I thought it was not possible anymore. Like in my bio, it says, you know, I mentioned script writing in there. You know, that was a deep interest of mine when I was a teenager. And I made 2 short films when I was 19. My teachers at S.J. Willis Alternative School, where all the juvenile delinquents went, you know, really encouraged my creativity. You know, I had an English teacher that really encouraged me to write and express myself, and I found deep healing in that. I always found myself writing about these topics that we're talking about, you know, addiction, and so yeah, that interest is always there. But now,
Like each one of you have found healing by practicing your artwork, by sharing your
100%.
craft.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really helped me reflect on traumas of the past. It's helped me reflect on all kinds of things, writing in this way. And
When I first wrote this story, I had to send out bits and pieces, you know, to my family so that they can read it and tell me if they were going to sue me for it or not.
Mhm.
And that was, you know, in some ways that was very liberating, because it's like, you know, there's a point where you have to say, I can't give any more fucks because I got no more fucks to give. You know, I'm tired. I just want to do it. Just do it. Just put it out there. And if they don't like it, well, then fuck, go ahead. You can't squeeze blood out of a stone. I'm still a writer. I'm still fucking poor. And, you know, go ahead and sue me if you don't. Because none of them came back to me and said, oh, well, no, change this, change that, do this, do that. None of them ever read it. I don't even know. Like, I mean, I got 7 brothers and sisters, and my mother is still alive, and none of them have read my book. So, no, it doesn't bother me, actually. I mean, I think it's good because, I mean, for me, it was a catharsis. And we were talking about that earlier, about catharsis, writing for catharsis. And that's how I got into this gig. It was TWS, writer studio at SFU, and you know, and got into the memoir program, and, you know, just writing for catharsis, like just. And one day my mentor, JJ Lee, said, you know, this isn't a fucking counseling session. Just get it out. Just fucking tell the story. Who cares? Because once the story's out, I mean, it's out, right? I mean, you've gotten it out. It's in your journals, whatever, right? It's in your paper. It's in your computers. It's wherever. You haven't published it, but I mean, it's out there. And that's catharsis in itself. You know, print it up, burn it on the fucking beach if you have to, you know? Just to clear that spirit or whatever, right? You know, I mean, and yeah, so I don't know.
Mahara, you're a counselor, so you work on both sides of the fence here. You're like as a healing practitioner and as a writer too.
Yeah.
So that
I had that kind of English teacher too, who was really fantastic. He really helped me in a way through my adolescence, but he also helped me to write, and he was very sensitive about it. I still remember him. I was trying to look him up today to thank him, but he's probably not alive anymore, I don't think. But he was really, really very helpful. He really cared a lot. So that made a lot of difference. And it was a therapeutic process for me then. And sometimes it still is. I was going to read a poem that I wrote about one of my sisters. But are we going in order?
we can. I think it's time for another reading. I think. Okay. Do you want to lead us off?
Okay, I'll start. Just trying to remember which book it was in. I published quite a bit in Gatherings. That was a publication through Thetis Books, Great Young Ing. They had a lot of different volumes, so
I don't have that one.
that's one place I was in. And also Native Poetry in Canada, which SFU uses it as far as I know.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite anthologies, and I have it signed by like Kateri and Greg and
Oh,
Lee.
good.
Gregory's go first.
Nice.
So it's a pretty bad.
So this is the 1960s. Linda Louise. Linda, I miss your sunny coral lipstick, fruit-flavored scents, older adolescents teaching me to dance to summer music, crisp ironed shirts, white ruffled tops, everything the latest. The Lion Sleeps Tonight always reminds me of you. You are the coolest. White shoulder perfume always reminds me of you. I dedicate my life work to you. There is nothing that can measure the shock I felt that morning I learned of your death. I was 15, you were 19. Our brother, drunk, drove through a red light. 28 years later, and I cry as I open a tube of coral lipstick in the drugstore, understanding now why I have been craving that color around me. When I was a child, you ran after me and cradled my head to your breast. When I was afraid, I'll never forget your beautiful brown eyes. I'll never forget your joking and teasing. I'll never forget.
Very beautiful.
That was awesome.
You want to read more?
Yeah, I'll read another one. This I would dedicate to my late cousin, Leonard George. The water is falling, surrendering over the wet rocks. It is teal blue in the moonlight. The brightness of summer touches the midnight blue sky. I remember my cousin speaking. One wall is windows in the room we are in. He sounds the same talking to this room packed with people as he does when we stand alone. He is wearing a faded denim shirt and jeans. His hair is braided. Silver runs through it now. He has large hands with long fingers, and he traces the air as he speaks. His hand flows downward as he talks about water, how it symbolizes humility, and how humble we have to be to do this work. He says that water is flowing underneath the building we are sitting in now. We are on ground level, facing the lush, green, sunlight-filled woods. I feel grateful when it is my turn to speak, as I have followed my elder, Kyandrius, and 3 chiefs, beginning with the eldest. I am the youngest here. The water is flowing in the right direction. And I just wanted to share something about the English language. I like what Marilyn Dumont said about it being the devil's language and having a very mixed relationship with it. Because I love words, I love imagery, etc. But I don't like that we were the first generation that didn't learn our language because of the residential schools. And I remember once asking my great uncle, Patty, what my great aunt's name was, like his sister. And he said, well, you know, when you're walking in the woods and it's morning, maybe early morning, and there's dew on everything. And I said, yes. And he said, and you notice that there's a spider web, and the spider web has dew on it. And the sun shines, and it shines right through one of those drops of dew. That's what her name means.
Wow.
And it was one word. And English and where its roots come from is so arrogant to think that it is the most fantastic language that there is. But there are not very many words in English that tell a story.
With one word.
Yeah. And I think that probably happened a lot. I mean, I've listened to some of his tapes. And
One word sounds like a poem to me.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing about colonial language, especially the English language, was respect colonialism. Is like you can go to every continent on this planet, and there's not one indigenous culture that it hasn't affected in some way or completely eradicated. And the hypocrisy of the language, I was listening to a young lady, an Indigenous lady, talk a couple of days ago Instagram, the little feeds, and she was talking about the word decolonize keeps the colonial idea front and center. It makes it center stage when it doesn't need to be center stage. It's not supposed to be center stage. So the idea was to re-indigenize the colonial idea. So change that language so that we're taking the changing it. English is a very flexible language. It can do all kinds of tricks and it's linguistic gymnastics, right? It's made up of every other bloody language it's ever colonized. And why can't we do that with it now? Why is it that we see in the regular school systems and the education systems everywhere across the bloody world that it has to follow these dogmatic horseshit rules about storytelling? It's the biggest challenge, I think, for Indigenous writers today is having an editor say that's not proper English. I don't give a fuck if it's proper English. It's not supposed to be. I'm Native. First off, I wasn't allowed to speak my language. And then when I was supposed to learn how to speak English, I wasn't allowed to learn that either. You put me in the stupidest class with all of that, every other, literally, they put me in a class of handicapped people because they just assumed that I couldn't read and count. I was 9 years old and I'm reading fucking King James Bible. And this is what the problem with the English language is. It just assumes that we're all savages and that we can't read and that we can't learn. And I'm going off. I know I'm angry about it, but I mean, it's held me down. I'm 55 years old and I'm finally getting my voice, finally getting to speak about it.
Definitely some irony or complexity there in that we're colonized, we're all writers, we're storytellers, and we're using the English language to tell our stories
because
it's not our languages, right?
We weren't allowed to.
Growing up, I didn't hear that much Anishinaabe.
Yeah.
My mom went to residence school. My aunt, my uncle, my grandmother, those two generations, they all went to residential school. So I know random words. But.
My mom would pull us out of those schools. They'd come and take us away, and then my mom would come back and she'd fucking steal us all back. 7 of us kids. Just fucking walk right in there, kick the door down, fucking take her kids back. A powerful woman, man. I wouldn't fuck with my mom. She's 86 years old. I still won't fuck with her. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more reading from you, Alex, and as well, and Joseph, if you want to do another reading as well.
I felt like I've talked a lot.
Okay. Alex, you want to
say one thing about the English language? Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's contrary. I don't know. That's one thing I've been reflecting on as I have a bit of an album's worth of material I've used, trying to not repeat myself, continuously use the English language in different ways, find what rhymes together. And after writing thousands of words, I'm I need to write in my language. Exactly. So I try. There's some songs and things that I've written that do use it, but I grew up with my mom not really speaking language. But anyway, this is an interesting topic that I've been thinking about, especially with kids now. It gives me a chance to learn the language with them, way that I didn't get to grow up, So
That's beautiful.
Got to make it more of a priority. But I'll share one last thing.
Go for it, man. Drop it.
So this is called Tales of the Red Road, and it just came from just thinking to myself, I was 21 months sober or something like that. 21 months now. No boozing. So now every month I change it. So 28 months now, no boozing. The red road is the path that I'm now choosing. I walk along the tracks to evade the city's intrusions and then trek home to steep a herbal tea infusion. Helps ward off that colonial illusion, because firewater only propels the wheels of confusion. Trying to pick up the pieces of my mind I was losing. Hard when so many memories are trauma-inducing. Here's an onomatopoeia for you. Oof. It's like each and every recollection triggers me, nearly sabotaging my can control and symmetry, as if Jim Beam was pulling the strings for me as a master of puppetry. So many blood spit nights of delinquency, but now I'm elevating to a higher power's frequency, and the only thing I'm chugging is 2 or 3 cups of tea. Heck yeah, and make it a double as I navigate through the wreckage and rubble. A native like me was always into trouble, but the high was bound to burst like a bubble. Pop goes the liquor great devourer of souls, consuming all that surrounds like a black hole. My cousin saying, yo, my bro, you're out of control, losing your soul supposedly in the name of rock and roll, killing yourself to live, but you're doing it slow but steady with each line shot and hard pill to swallow. Some boot prints you don't want your juniors to follow. So now I'm rising up like a totem pole, but sometimes I can feel so hollow, in solitude wallowing in my sorrow. But hey, I guess I won't be hung over tomorrow, asking someone if they got some lucky coins I can borrow. For one, but you know one is never the peak. One day turns to weeks till you're on a year-long streak. Your tolerance, moderation, and will is weak till the pain pecks at you sharp as a raven's beak. Gets to the point when the binge just ain't so fun, and the punchline of the party you're like a big old pun. Made it past 27, but still at the risk of dying too young. Letting the crescendo of your ballad go unsung. Ain't it fun? Letting the crescendo of your ballad go unsung. Ain't it fun? Keep on walking. Keep on walking. Keep on walking down the red road, cousin. Keep on walking. Quack, walk a walking. Keep on walking down that red road, cousin.
To each of you for sharing your words and for talking about your work today. I really enjoyed getting to talk to, hearing from each one of you, and getting you to sign my books in the next minute. Yeah, just thank you to our audience for coming, and you can purchase a copy of their works from the tables out front from 32 Books. And I want to thank the staff and volunteers at Word Vancouver for making this event possible. And there's other events happening for Word Vancouver. You can check it out on the website. And yeah, and thank you again.
Thank you all.